This audio was brought to you by 11 Labs.
History is a set of lies agreed upon. Napoleon Bonaparte. Chapter 1. Look at them. Those buzzards are circling the castle. Oh, leave them be, Flora. They're just floating around. Probably upset that they'll have to wait so long before they can eat again. Nothing to worry about. It's a good day. After all, you should be happy. The war is over. We won. Everything is going according to plan. I am happy, but they're up to something. I can feel it. You've always been so unreasonably suspicious. Well, our mother didn't trust them either, so why should I? A chair scraped across the floor, then settled. I know. She was even worse than you. Say what you will, but this is my home, not theirs. As soon as the sun rises, they need to leave. I remember that was all I could hear with my ear pressed against the cold stone wall as the voices moved further away. A door shut and I jumped back before my bedroom door flung open. Your grandfather walked in full dress. The white trim and military creases outlined the navy uniform that tailored neatly to his sinewy frame. He asked if I was ready. I said yes, to which his hands propped up on his hips as he stared at my dishevelled look. My shoes were off. Tie was loose and a cufflink missing from the blazer I'd already managed to wrinkle within the hour. He fetched a second navy blazer from my closet before he finally knelt down to straighten my tie. My father shook his finger in my face and said, "You better straighten up. Today is one of the most important days of your life. The most important will come in due time. You may not understand this now or care, but I assure you, you will." Geez, sorry, I thought. It was 9:30. Still too early for him to be so irritable. Granted, it was the third time he'd fixed the tie that morning. He adjusted the crest that was pinned to the collar of his jacket, then took a careful scan of himself in my mirror before leaving the room. To say it would be one of the most important days ever was awfully assumptuous. I was 11. At the time, it was nothing more than another Monday. The same hubbub of conversations came from the kitchen and woke me from my sleep. I floated around the kitchen counters picking bits of food off of the plates before the chefs and servants shooed me away. Immediately after, my parents snatched me up and forced me to stand at their side for the morning meeting in the Great Hall. From the start of it, everything seemed strange to me. We arrived far earlier than usual, and over half of the people I grew up seeing they were gone. My eyes glossed over the waves chiselled into the wall behind the Queen's throne. In front, the High Council's circled marble table lay in the middle of the room, with 6 empty chairs surrounding it. There was a seat to represent the 6 kingdoms of Uriah: Elysia, Augustin, Peregrine, Yulma, Osha, and Druid. It was said that they only used this room once a month or in cases of the utmost significance. That was before my time. The closest I'd ever come to seeing the council were when I'd stare at their painted portraits that hung along the walls. The abstract colours blended perfectly on each canvas. Every layer and streak occupied just the right space to highlight the best features of their faces. Enclosed in glass beside each of the former lords and ladies were the medals of their kingdom's crests that were worn on their uniforms to acknowledge their position. 5 frames lined the side wall, but dangling far away 2 others hung on each side of the clock in direct view for the Queen, former Elysian Lord High Chief, General Augustus Pugh, and his wife, the esteemed Lady Elizabeth Pugh. Our Queen was caught fixating on them quite often, actually. The Pughs were the ones who ignited the campaign that started the war in the first place. It was hard to say that they, or any of the others, deserved the honour of the Great Hall. Here, they were traitors in the eyes of many, and were hardly spoken of inside these walls. Not a single council person had stepped foot in the Great Hall besides my father for as long as I'd lived. As far as I was concerned, there was no council anymore, and we here at Elysia met in the Great Hall on a weekly basis. When we did, things got done, and that was the end of it. Now it was time to meet there again. Just another Monday. All of a sudden, a few new faces marched in. 3 men, 2 women, with my dear uncle in the group. I watched them strut with their chin held too high as they stomped past everyone in the room, taking their seat at the table without a word or even a second of eye contact. Most of them appeared to be as old and tiresome as the last, except for one, who must have been much closer to my age than any of theirs. Father kissed my mother and I, then plopped down amongst them. Even still, the Queen's throne remained vacant. It would be no problem to hold on for a while longer. She was normally the first in attendance. Regardless, nothing of importance ever began without her. As we waited, the silence was so deafening that I could hardly stay put. Too much quiet will drive a man mad, you know. For the duration I twiddled my thumbs and constantly caught myself nodding off, which was much better than Mother noticing, who proceeded to give me a quick pinch on the ears before I came to my senses. It was ridiculous. I already knew how the days went by now. I'd eat breakfast, of course. Meeting after, and if nothing new was announced, I'd sit around for the next chunk of hours drudging through my studies and hoping I didn't have to run the maze afterwards. Then I was free to go sing and dance in the ballroom, play hide-and-seek around the inner bailey, shoot arrows and practice fencing, snack, more sword training and make some art before dinner. In that order. Simple enough. It was rather fun, considering almost the entire schedule was done alongside my closest and albeit only friend, the Princess, Jamie Tertian, who had the pleasure of suffering through the same exasperating events as I did. More, in fact. We'd helped each other through them all. For the first time I would be facing the day alone. "Where are they?" I asked my mother while tugging on her dress. "Shh," she hushed. But she gave me a glare that said more than any words could. Instantly I knew to bow my head and keep my lips sealed. A moment later my father stood up before everyone. "Thank you all for being here. For those of you who do not know, I am Lord High Chief Elias Parks. Today marks a new day for this marvellous kingdom of Elysia, and even more for the lands of Uriah. Many have lost their land, their homes, and their lives fighting for this cause. We have buried more loved ones than the ground should be allowed to hold and wept tears of joy every time one of our own came back home safely. For years we have fought, suffered, and served under the same kings and queens, all while raising the same banners in their name. Yet only now can we say that we are a kingdom united. At last, the War of Burning Lakes has come to an end. We've won. Now, as we dawn a new era, we shall start by restoring power back to its rightful places, beginning with the revival of our High Council. The Lord High Chief went on to introduce the new members, stating, "I do apologise if I'm not as familiar with each of you as I should be," he quipped. First, there was Lord Matthew Lockwood, a hardened man of war and former long-standing commander of Druid, who was thought to be quite possibly the most level-headed and sensible one in the room. Next we had my uncle, the renowned merchant from Augustin, Lord Tinley Finch. Though these are not brothers by blood, father used to say that they could not be closer even if they shared the womb. Undoubtedly they spent countless nights of their youth dreaming of this day, lest we not forget the person whom many, including myself, would declare as one of the greatest scientific minds in the history of Uriah. Her feats of engineering started with the creation of multiple dams in Osher. The benefits formed a new world for her home, as irrigation and hydroelectric power were only the beginning. A woman who did not need any introduction, Lady Cleo Ashton. Still, it was the beloved Lady Adeline Brannigan that was the only member whose family had technically seated someone on the council since its inception. The land of Peregrine had been all the better for it. Finally we were introduced to young Lord Kenji Nuncio, a man it was clear that they dearly missed. Kenji had been made to grow up very fast, but had since made his family and kingdom proud in that time, proving himself to be a lord well worthy of the honour. Nevertheless, there was still no sign of the Queen anywhere until the rest of the council rose to their feet. General Pugh once stood in this very spot to usher in a queen, one he admittedly regretted. Today, he, Lady Elizabeth, and every other lord and lady of old are smiling as we mark the beginning of a new reign. "Excuse me? What is he talking about?" I asked my mother to no avail. "She's an honourable woman, very well accustomed to our ways," the High Chief added. "Beautiful, diligent, humble and kind. She will serve her people above all else. May her reign shine light on this world. Please join me in welcoming our new leader, Queen Regent Eleanor Pugh." My head sprung up. She was not our queen. Madame Pugh entered the room wearing a spectacular lilac Victorian dress that fared well with her pale skin and rosy cheeks. Everyone around me bowed to her, as did I. Even as a child I knew very well the consequences of not acknowledging the crown. Madame Pugh's fingers ran carefully across the curved marble edges and velvet seating of the throne. She was so mesmerised that she paid no attention to the ogling eyes on her. It was noticeably all new to her. She sought no more attention to herself than was necessary, yet was doing her best to contain her excitement. A few waves, no speech. She curtsied to the crowd, then graciously claimed the throne. For the next hour, Madame Pugh kept adjusting her posture while her hands couldn't seem to find a resting place, until she eventually tucked them between her thighs. By the end of the meeting, the day was set. There would be a trial held that evening, or rather a sentencing, followed by the coronation dinner. Those two events were never held on the same day. Trials were often foregone conclusions here, and Elysians always felt it best to try to keep misfortunes and celebrations separate, which told me that no one viewed any part of the day as misfortune. That doesn't make any sense. Madame Pugh can't be queen if we already have one. What's happened? Why aren't she and Jamie here? I asked. Mother sighed and stared at me with sad, helpless eyes, like I would crumble if told the truth. Up to this point, no one told me a thing. Not that they were required to, of course, or that I would understand. I was just a boy back then, still in primary school, held in the castle. Maybe they thought the matters of the situation were far beyond anything that I could make sense of. Maybe. The first useful thing that I was told that day came from my father's answer as we dispersed from the hall. A little more patience and attentiveness will mean a lot less questions. Just as the words left his mouth, I heard the rattle of chains approaching. There was a rhythmic clicking of heels against the floor. Mr. Gerald Donnelly, Lord Commander of the Queen's Guard, was escorting a new prisoner to the chambers beneath the castle. Mr. Donnelly was a rather large and puffy man and the only guard I ever cared for. "What's made you smile today?" he always asked. Best of all, he would actually take the time to listen. That mattered to me at least. Although there were many individuals that occupied the beautiful castle that we call Cardinal Peak, most of them couldn't be disturbed with us children for even a second. Mr. Donnelly made sure that no one felt like a bother unless his task was absolutely urgent. Even so, if he saw you in passing, it typically warranted a head nod or a wave. Perhaps that's why it stung a bit to watch him glance my way, frown, then shield the prisoner as they passed by. But I still saw her, our true queen, Galia Tertian.